There was a lot of fun stuff to watch tonight. We watched Beterbiev versus Bivol, which was a decent, great fight, but boxing is just not the same since I started watching UFC. It's just not as entertaining, unfortunately. There was some cool basketball games. Luka Doncic scored 30 points tonight. That was pretty fun too. And then Henry Cejudo, he quit. He gave up. No, I don't have that type of energy. All right. I don't. I'm going to defend Henry Cejudo here, not because I like Henry Cejudo, only because I want to call it the way I see it. And the way I see it is this whole foul thing. There's no structure to it. And the athletic commission should do a better job at doing a more, regular and consistent structure to how ref should ref fights and how ref should conduct themselves when stuff happens during fights. Because the more I watch the UFC, the more I realize that fighters can just foul and nothing will happen. It's as if you come into a fight as a professional MMA fighter and you are allowed to foul as much as 2 different times. Sometimes if you foul 2 times and it's the same foul twice, you might get a point deducted if you do it twice. But if you do, let's say, one low ball kick, you kick low, and then the other foul is like an eye poke, which are 2 separate foul, you're not going to get a point deducted, right? All I'm saying is, like, you can get away with a minimum of 2 fouls, 2 separate fouls in a UFC fight without getting a point deducted. And I don't understand what you need for it. You know what I mean? Ariel Helwani made a point. I know not a lot of people like Ariel Helwani, but he made a decent point a few years ago where he was saying fighters should get a warning in the back, in the locker room, when the ref comes and see them in the back before the fight. Not inside, because judging if a foul was intentional or unintentional in a fight is too vague, and the consistency will not continue. The consistency will not be in effect if you have a ref that's making call based on like split decision situation, like, right? Most eyepokes won't be intentional. Most low blows won't be intentional. I think most cage grabs will be intentional. There's a few fouls that will be, but usually it's kind of all over the place, and you can't have a consistent rule set when all of these things are kind of case by case scenario. It should be you get a warning behind in the back before your fight, and in the fight, if you do a low blow, if you eye poke someone, whether it's intentional or unintentional, you get a point deducted right away, because regardless of if it's intentional or not, it affects the fighter. It affects the other fighter that gets eye poked. It affects the other fighter that gets kick low. It does, and it will impact his performance later on. So, kind of having this mentality where, like, it was unintentional, they should continue, and like, it's just an eye poke, just keep fighting. It's like, so as a fighter, I have an incentive to cheat, because I'm like, all right, if I can get eye poked and nothing happens to him, then I'll try to eye poke him. You know what I mean? And nothing will happen to me. Like, what makes the difference? I think it should be strict. It should be the rule set, and that's just what it is. And that way, I feel like it's going to be more consistent, and that's also going to, let the fighters be very much aware of their weapons right away. Like, as soon as the fight starts, they're not going to be aware of it after 2 warnings. They're going to be aware of it right away, because they know that if something happens, if they kick low, there's an eye poke, they get a point deducted, and that's it. This is what Dana White had to say about it. And I don't know. I think this is a weird response to it. The UFC has been trying to incorporate this new glove, and I think Dana White is kind of pissed about it. The UFC as a whole, they're kind of pissed about it because they had to come up with this new glove to fix specifically eye pokes, right? And then at UFC 309, John Jones didn't like the gloves, so he asked Dana White, please, I don't want to wear them. And Dana White was like, sure, baby. We don't have to wear the gloves, whatever you say. So they didn't. So they didn't wear the gloves. And then from that point on, they reverted back to the old gloves. So basically, they try to come up with a new idea to fix a problem, to kind of bring up a solution to Eyepokes because it's been an issue for a long time. And then John Jones didn't like it, so they reverted back, and Dana White was kind of like, fuck, man, we came up with something, it didn't work, it goes back to it. And now another fucking situation where a fight is a main event of a kind of pretty significant event is ended with an eyepoke issue. So I know Dana White is probably frustrated, but putting the blame on Cejudo, who got eyepoked clearly bad in both of his eyes, to me it's crazy. It's crazy to say because, maybe I'm just a bitch, but I'm not trying to fight if I can't see with my eyes. Like, obviously,
Obviously, eyepokes have been a problem for many, many years. You tried to solve them with new gloves, but they're going to be in the sport. But like a significant eyepoke like that, do you believe a point should have been taken?
If you thought it was intentional, if you thought he intentionally poked him in the eye.
See, that's the issue that I have with this argument, because how many intentional foul do you have? If I know that I can, how many unintentional foul do I have? Yeah. So can Song Yadong unintentionally foul an Eyepoke Cejudo 4 or 5 times? As long as they're unintentional, there's no point that should be deducted. I mean, to me, that sounds crazy because, they have 4-ounce gloves. Their fingers are out. So eyepokes will happen often. And for them to kind of just have the energy, like, as long as he didn't try to do it, how do you know? How can you even tell? I don't understand this narrative. I really don't. It should just be there's an eyepoke. It affects the fighter, so take a point. That's it. Cejudo's now fighting with a blurry vision. So if nothing happens, what does that mean? What does that entail? That you should eyepoke the guy back because you won't get anything in return. You know what I mean? Like, obviously they're saying intentional, but nobody knows if it's intentional. I'm fighting, I have my hands up, like I'm throwing, I just keep my hands up. How do you know? You know what I mean? The whole narrative of intentional, unintentional makes no sense to me. It really doesn't. My bad. I'm a bit sick, by the way, so my voice kind of is a bit raspy. I'm nonchalant right now. Have a deep, dark voice.
Do you believe it was intentional?
I'm sniffing around my face.
Yes? Why would he poke him in the eye? He was doing pretty well.
It was clearly, by the way, it was clearly not intentional. It was unintentional. But that doesn't mean there shouldn't have been a point taken away, in my opinion. Because it was also the second foul, which is the craziest part. I'm saying there should be one foul point right away. But it was the second foul. He kicked him low a few minutes before.
He was getting his ass.
But you see, that's the thing. Because it's a different foul. It makes a difference. Because the first foul was a low blow, and then the second foul was an eye poke, so they don't give him a point deduction. But if the first foul was an eye poke and then he eye poked him a second time, maybe they would have. You see how there's no consistency here? So if I do 2 fouls but are 2 different fouls, I'm good. All right. I'll just make sure to do that every single fight because I'm giving myself an advantage. I'll kick low and then I'll eye poke, and then we'll be on both on the same grounds, no point deduction. That's good.
Whooped and poked him in the eye. You could probably make the argument, but you're not sure it wasn't intentional.
No, it didn't.
What's your last name? Cejudo? Jimmy Cejudo over here thinks it was an intentional eye poke.
It didn't seem it. No, yeah, I get your point, but it was fight altering, right? So,
yeah, I mean. Yeah.
Fight altering.
Yeah, listen.
Every foul is usually fight altering, right? And even if it's not, it affects the fighter. And worst case scenario, guys are fighting with blurred vision. Guys are fighting with balls fucking tucked inside their stomach. Like, what I'm saying is a foul happened and it affects a fighter. Even if it's not the craziest of pain, it's like the guy that got fouled should have some sort of reward for it. It's maybe it's not the right word, but it's like the only guy being rewarded when a foul happens is the guy that fouled, because now the other guy is at a lower stage of where he was, and there's no point deducted. So there should be a reward every time a foul happened, and it should be the one that receives a foul, regardless of what happens. If I get eye pokes, but he glances me and it doesn't affect my vision that bad, it was still an eye poke. So there should be a point deducted. Now, if the eye poke is super bad and I can't really see, like I fucking get blurred out of my own eyes, well, now the point makes sense even more. But it should just be straight up, consistent rule set. Every time there's a foul that happened, there is a yellow flag, whatever. There's a foul. People now in hockey, they go in the fucking box and wait for 2 minutes when there's a foul that happens. In the NBA, if there's a foul and, you know, a shooting foul, they get free throws. Flag on the field if it's NFL, whatever. It's right away. There's no warning for a foul. Like, excuse me, don't do that again. What do you mean? The foul is already committed. There's an issue. It fucked up the play. It now fucks up the fighter. What are we doing? I'll give you a few warnings. And now it's not even a set amount of warnings. He could warn you as many times as you want. What the fuck is that? I'll warn you fucking 3 times for a foul before I give you a point deduction. The guy got eye poked 3 times. Like, what are we doing here, buddy?
Eye pokes are never good. But like you said, they happen a lot. And fights do continue after eye pokes.
Again, what is this narrative? As if every eye poke is the same. Like, not everybody's going to react the same way. Not every eye poke is the same strength and density, whatever. Not every fingers goes the same depth in the eyes. Pause. But that's the truth, right? Not every eyes will react the same way to an eye poke. So not just because there's many eye pokes that happen in your sport and it just fights continue, that means that every person that get eye pokes should just continue and, you know, man up and like, bro, what are we saying here?
I mean, I don't know. I'd have to look and see how many fights were actually stopped due to an eye poke. Not many.
Fluffy Hernandez picks up a big...
Yeah, I don't understand this entire narrative. It makes no sense to me. Like I said, the rule set should be consistent. It should be just what it is. There shouldn't be no debating with case-by-case scenario and the ref just like trying to figure out if a foul was intentional or not. A foul's a foul. It happened. A point should be taken away. Or if it's half a point, I don't give a fuck. But it should be a repercussion right away. A foul happened. The guy that got fouled gets a reward or some sort of reward. Maybe a point is too much because there's fucking 3 rounds in a fight and maybe he could fuck it up that bad. But like maybe it could be 0.5 of a point or I don't know, some other form of, you know, reward for the guy that just got fouled or consequence for the guy that fouls. Anyways, I guess I didn't have much else to say. John Silva is a monster. He really is. He's going to be a fucking problem for the division. I wish Topuria would have stayed because this guy... He's definitely going to be at the top for a little while. But yeah, Henry Cejudo is getting old, man. 38 years old. Doesn't have the same speed. He's the size of a flyweight. I mean, he's 5'4" or something. You know what I mean? So it's difficult to compete against the new age of bantamweights nowadays, bro. It really is. Like the new age of MMA fighters, tall, skinny dudes. Unfortunately, Cejudo has the build of like a short, stocky dude. For MMA, it's not the best. Because he's big, but super short, right? So it's a difficult stylistic matchup, and especially at 38 at these lower weight divisions, it's gonna be tough to compete. And he definitely lost a bit of speed. Song Yadong was so fast, he was doing good, and Song Yadong is also going to be a problem for the bantamweight divisions in the future. I definitely agree. I see that since, you know, the first few times I watched the fight against Marlon Moraes. I remember that fight. I was like, yeah, this guy's going to be a problem. And he still has a lot of time ahead of him. So, yeah, we're going to see some good things from Song Yadong. I think Cejudo should definitely try if he can. If he can. I don't know if he can, to be fair, because he's kind of a big 5'4" guy. But if he can go down to 125 and fight like Moreno, that would be an interesting fight that I feel like a lot of people would love to see. Have a better chance at 125 for sure. But yeah, making 125 at 38, I don't know. He'd probably just retire. I heard Dana White didn't even want to make the rematch. So we'll see what Cejudo does. But lay low of him. Like, don't be, is that the expression, lay low? Or like, don't go too crazy on Cejudo. Like, I see a lot of people being like pissed at him for not continuing. Like, guys, put yourself in his shoes for a second, all right? Like, I know we watch MMA, so we're kind of like conditioned to thinking that guys should just keep fighting regardless of what happens. Like guys like Dan Hooker exist and shit. But you don't see out of your eyes, you don't continue fighting. I'm trying to put myself in his shoes. Yeah. Put myself in. Yeah. If I were an MMA fighter, I'm trying to come into every fight as prepared and ready as I can. If something happens and I'm not confident that I can win a fight anymore, I don't want to be in there. Maybe that's just my weak mentality of a beta male. Maybe. But I also think if you're not confident that you can win a fight, you shouldn't be in it. And if your vision is blurred to the point where you can't see punches come in, you don't have the same, awareness of what's going on, that you shouldn't be fighting. So that's my opinion on it. Let me know what you guys think. Have a good night. Peace out.